The scent of sage and roasted turkey curled through our Grand Rapids dining room, laced with Perry Como's Home for the Holidays crackling on Mom's old turntable, a Thanksgiving ritual I'd kept since she passed. Candlelight danced across our mismatched Corelle plates, their chips hidden by years of careful polishing. I'd spent all morning basting the bird, mashing potatoes, kneading dough for rolls, as if perfection could stitch my family together. Bradley Sinclair stood at the head, wine glass raised like a politician at a rally. "I'm leaving," he declared, voice slick with self-assurance. "I'm in love with my secretary." Silence crashed like a Michigan blizzard, heavy and suffocating. The turkey's steam faded. My son Ethan's fork froze, gravy dripping onto the tablecloth I'd ironed at dawn. My daughter Hannah traced her cranberry sauce with her spoon, eyes down, as if she could vanish into its ruby depths. My sister Diana's mouth hung open, a green bean dangling from her fork. Her husband Robert folded his napkin into smaller squares, dodging the wreckage unfolding before him. "She's 22, Bradley added, chest puffed with a pride that twisted my stomach. "And she's everything you're not, Margot." The words stung like a slap, sharp and public, but his smug smirk cut deeper. My fingers tightened around my fork, the one I'd gripped during the '98 recession, serving him meatloaf when we couldn't afford gas for date nights. My heart pounded, a drumbeat of rage and betrayal, but my face stayed calm, a mask perfected over decades. Inside, I was screaming, "How dare you unravel us here, on my mother's plates?" My voice came out steady, slicing the air. Perfect timing, actually. I stood, not to run, but to deny him the satisfaction of seeing me break. For 25 years, I'd woven a life with this man, through sleepless nights with colicky babies, winters when his commissions vanished, birthdays he missed, closing deals. I'd balanced budgets while rocking cribs, paid bills when his checks bounced, cooked meals that carried us through lean years. All poured into this house, this table, these moments I thought were ours. Now he stood there, smirking over candied yams, torching it all with a glass of Myers Cabernet he pretended was vintage. "We'll talk details later," he said, still holding his glass like a mockery of grace. "To new beginnings." No one toasted. Hannah's chair scraped back, tears streaming as she fled, her footsteps echoing upstairs. Ethan's eyes burned, a mix of fury and confusion, as if he blamed me for not stopping this sooner. He'd seen his father as a hero, charming, untouchable. Now that illusion was cracking, and I felt the weight of his unspoken question. "How did you let this happen, Mom?" "You should leave," I said, teeth clenched, my voice low but ironclad. "It's still my house," Bradley replied, cool as a boardroom shark, sipping his wine. "I'll pack tomorrow." Tomorrow. The audacity of that word sliced through me, sharper than his betrayal. Tomorrow, when I'd wake to a home that felt foreign, to children whose trust he'd shattered, to a life I'd rebuild from ash. Guests slipped out, murmuring apologies or offering pitying glances that stung worse than silence. Diana touched my arm, her eyes soft with regret, but I shook my head. I couldn't bear comfort yet. I cleared plates, hands on autopilot, each clink of porcelain swallowing a scream. My chest ached, not just with heartbreak, but with the raw wound of humiliation, strategic, public, premeditated. As Bradley retreated to his study, wine bottle in hand, I stood alone in the kitchen, the Vernon's ginger ale hidden in the fridge calling my name. A rebellion from my college days. I poured a glass, the fizz sharp against my lips, and raised it to the empty room. "To survival," I whispered, my voice trembling but defiant. He thought he'd broken me. He forgot who'd carried this family through every storm. The dishwasher hummed, grinding through pie plates and shattered illusions. I scrubbed dishes like a ghost, hands moving while my mind replayed Bradley's smirk, his toast, the way he'd turned our Thanksgiving into a stage. My throat burned with unshed tears, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. Upstairs, he was probably pouring another glass, laughing into his phone, reliving his performance. "You humiliated me in front of our children, at my table. No warning." Just a headline, delivered with glee. A memory flickered, unbidden. Mom in her kitchen, teaching me to crimp pecan pie crust when I was pregnant with Ethan, my hands clumsy with nerves. "Your strength is in the quiet, Margot," she'd said, her eyes steady as she guided my fingers. "Never let anyone turn your silence into erasure." I'd been scared about motherhood, about Bradley's late nights, and her words had anchored me. A promise passed from her mother to her, now to me. I'd forgotten them, buried under years of compromise, but they stirred now, a tether to the women who'd raised me to stand tall. I reached for a plate, soap slick on my fingers, when I saw it. The answering machine's red light blinking like a heartbeat. One new message. I pressed play with a spoon's tip, my breath catching. "Margot, this is Daniel Forsyth, your Uncle Charles's attorney. I've been trying to reach you. There's something urgent about his estate. Please call me as soon as possible." The world stilled. Soap dripped onto the counter unnoticed. Uncle Charles, Mom's older brother, the quiet man with a dry wit and a memory like a steel trap. Pancreatic cancer stole him 3 weeks ago, too fast for goodbyes. Every Sunday, I'd brought him potato soup, sat by his recliner, shared stories of Ethan's robotics projects or Hannah's sketches. His eyes would crinkle, as if my visits were his week's highlight. I expected a keepsake, his pocket watch, maybe, or a first-edition Steinbeck. His bungalow was cluttered with clocks and books, not wealth. Bradley always mocked Charles, calling him stuck in the 70s, sneering that his thrift didn't match his true net worth. I'd ignored it, chalking it up to Bradley's obsession with Flash. Now, those words echoed, heavy with possibility. My heart raced, not with hope, not yet, but with a flicker of something sharper, like sunlight breaking through a storm. Bradley's betrayal had torn through me like a Lake Michigan squall. This message was different, still, quiet, powerful, like the eye of the hurricane. I dried my hands, trembling, and sank onto the couch, the remnants of dinner around me. Half-eaten stuffing, Hannah's crumpled napkin, a wineglass with Bradley's lipstick-free rim. Mom's voice lingered, tying me to Charles, to the legacy they'd left for me to carry, for Ethan and Hannah, for the generations still to come. This wasn't just about survival. It was about building something lasting, something Bradley could never touch. I dialed Forsyth's office, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. "I'm ready to talk," I told a secretary. "First thing tomorrow." Upstairs, Bradley's laugh drifted down, carefree, probably sweet-talking Chloe, his fresh start. I caught my reflection in the hall mirror, expecting defeat. Instead, my eyes were sharp, alive. He had no idea I'd heard that message. No idea the ground beneath his smug empire was shifting. Bradley passed out in his study, wine bottle empty, ego untouched. I sat in our bedroom, surrounded by 25 years of frozen memories. Framed photos stared from every surface. Our wedding day, Michigan leaves swirling, both of us grinning like love could conquer all. Ethan and Hannah in matching PJs, toddling across this creaky Victorian we'd bought before we could afford more than a thrift store couch, and a Zenith TV that flickered during Cheers reruns, a faded snapshot from Mackinac Island, fudge-stained smiles under a summer sky. Each image was a lie now, a story I'd told myself about trust and partnership. We met senior year at Michigan State. Bradley's charm was electric, making my stomach flutter even as my brain whispered caution. I was the planner, color-coded notes, a roadmap to my CPA license pinned to my dorm wall. He was chaos, late to class, quick with a joke, promising a life bigger than my spreadsheets. He'd tease me over Verner's at the Union, and I'd laugh, letting control slip. We were opposites, but we called it balance, and I believed it. Early days were stitched with grit. Ramen dinners, joint calendars, dreams of a house with a porch swing. I backed him when he launched his insurance agency, proofread proposals when he doubted himself. He cheered when I landed my first accounting job, bringing home Springsteen's Born to Run to blast while we painted this house, laughing over paint-flecked jeans. Every dent in the hardwood held a story. Ethan's toy trucks, Hannah's dance recitals, nights we'd slow dance to Fleetwood Mac after the kids slept. I remembered Ethan at 10, coming home with a bruised cheek from a bully at school. I'd sat him down, bandaged his pride, and driven to the principal's office the next day, demanding action. He'd clung to me afterward, his trust a weight I'd carried ever since. And Hannah, at 15, crushed when she missed an art scholarship, sobbing in her room. I'd stayed up all night, helping her revise her portfolio, whispering, "You're enough," until she believed it. Those moments, quiet, fierce, had defined me as their mother, long before Bradley's betrayal. Even when times got hard, his commissions tanking, both kids needing braces, I stayed steady. Late nights, I crunched numbers to stretch every dime, my calculator a lifeline. Bradley called me his anchor, and I wore it like a badge, proud to keep us afloat. But somewhere, anchor twisted into a chain, dragging me down. He criticized my cardigans, my meatloaf recipe from Mom's church cookbook, my predictable routines. Said I'd lost my spark, that he craved adventure. Diana warned me over coffee at Myers Cafe. Men like Bradley don't crash. They drift, slow and silent. I brushed it off, blaming midlife jitters, telling myself couples hit rough patches. I ignored the distance, the late nights, the way his smiles stopped reaching his eyes. Then Chloe Martin appeared, 22, all glossy hair and zero qualifications except endless availability. Bradley called her intuitive, his voice softening in a way it hadn't for me in years. I called her a child. He hired her 3 months ago. When I brought lunch to his office, I heard giggling behind his locked door. I left the sandwiches with the receptionist, my chest tight, but told myself it was nothing, files, maybe a bad joke. Now it clicked, the new wardrobe, the gym obsession, the convertible he gifted me, but never let me drive. He wasn't restless, he was scripting his exit. And, the worst part? He didn't end it quietly, with respect for the life we'd built. He made it a spectacle at my Thanksgiving, on plates I'd scrubbed for decades. My hands trembled as I touched our wedding photo, tracing the younger me who'd believed his promise. We're a team, Margot. Always. That girl felt like a stranger, her trust a weight I could no longer carry. Tears pricked my eyes, not for him, but for her, for the years I'd spent holding up a partnership he'd abandoned. Mom's words echoed, "Never let anyone turn your silence into erasure." She'd been my anchor, Charles her echo, and now I'd be theirs, for my kids, for the legacy we'd pass down. Morning came with Michigan's brutal November light, glassy, cold, cutting through the bedroom like a blade. Bradley folded monogrammed shirts into a suitcase on our bed, moving with the ease of a man packing for a golf weekend, not the end of a marriage. Seeing him there, in the space where we'd whispered dreams and soothed nightmares, twisted something raw in my chest. "Chloe's apartment's too small," he said, not looking up, as if I were a secretary taking notes. "I booked the Parkview Hotel till we find something permanent."
We.
The word was a splinter, lodging deep. I stood in the doorway, still in yesterday's cardigan, arms crossed to hide the tremble. "When did it start?" My voice was quieter than I meant, but it carried every unanswered question. He paused, a shirt half folded, caught off guard. Maybe he'd expected tears, collapse. "July," he said. "The company picnic." She listens, Margot. She cares about my ideas, my dreams. "When did you last ask about me?" The accusation stung, erasing every night I'd balanced his books, every compromise I'd made to keep his ego intact. I studied him. The dyed hair, the too tight jeans, the cologne screaming desperation. "What hurts most," I said, voice steady, "is that you didn't respect me enough to end it privately. You needed an audience. You needed me humiliated." "I needed people to know it's real," he snapped. "This isn't a fling. It's a clean break." No, it was a performance, one he thought he'd scripted perfectly. My chest burned with the urge to scream, but I held it in, letting the anger coil tight, focused, surgical. The doorbell rang, slicing the tension. I opened it to a courier, holding an envelope from Daniel Forsyth. My hands shook as I tore it open, the paper crinkling. The words blurred, then sharpened. "Sole beneficiary." Controlling interest. Comprehensive portfolio. $4.7 million. Commercial properties, investments, a charitable foundation, all mine. And the final blow, separate property, not subject to division in any marital estate. I sank into a kitchen chair, my breath shallow, clutching a handwritten note. Margot, you've always stood tall, even when the world tried to bend you. This is your safety net. Use it however you need. Love always, Charles. Tears welled, not for Bradley but for Charles, for the man who'd seen me when I'd been too busy holding up Bradley's world to see myself. He'd known I'd need this, not just money, but a shield, a chance to build a legacy for Ethan and Hannah, to honor Mom's quiet strength and pass it forward. Upstairs, Bradley's voice drifted down, cocky, probably telling Chloe about his freedom. He thought I was the discarded wife, broken, left to clean up his mess. My hand steadied, folding the letter. You always underestimated the quiet ones. I murmured, the words for him, for Mom, for me. The tables hadn't just turned, they'd flipped. I didn't scream. I didn't throw dishes. I opened a spreadsheet, fingers steady on the keys, each click a reclamation of control. While Bradley strutted around Grand Rapids, playing Bachelor at the Amway Grand, I did what I'd always done best, followed the money. This wasn't about budgets or tax season. This was about betrayal, written in bank statements and credit card charges, a story I refused to ignore. I called Forsyth to confirm the inheritance, untouchable, mine. Then I met Gwen, a forensic accountant with a sharp gaze, at the Bitter End Coffee House. Over black coffee and Paxki, she dissected our accounts like a surgeon peeling back skin. Insurance, huh, she said, circling anomalies. These dinners aren't client meetings. These hotel charges? Not golf trips. And this, she tapped a line, voice low. This is fraud. It started small, stakes billed as business. Weekend getaways he'd claimed were conferences. Then the gut punch. Thousands drained from our savings, money for Ethan's grad school, Hannah's dreams, gone without a receipt. Bradley's excuse? Liquidity issues, he'd mumbled, avoiding my eyes. There's more, Gwen said, her tone careful. He took a business loan against your house. A big one. You didn't sign. My breath caught, a cold weight in my chest. He forged my name? She nodded, sliding the proof across the table. The house, where we danced to Fleetwood Mac, where Hannah learned to ride a bike, where Ethan built his first robot, was collateral for his lies. He hadn't just cheated. He'd gambled our children's home, our memories, to fund his fantasy. My vision blurred, not with tears, but with a fury so sharp it felt holy. I thought of every night I'd audited client files while he networked, every sacrifice to keep us steady. He'd assumed I'd never fight back. I called Rachel Lynn, a divorce attorney whose reputation for dismantling men like Bradley was legendary. She reviewed the evidence, her smile calm but lethal. Financial misconduct, she said, flipping pages. Identity theft. Forged documents. The loan alone could mean prosecution. She leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. Justice, Margot, or war? I saw Bradley's smirk, his shrug, his assumption I'd fund his new life with Chloe. I saw my kids' faces, Hannah's tears, Ethan's confusion, and felt every year I'd carried alone. Both, I said, voice unwavering. Justice. And an end. By the time Bradley texted about a reasonable settlement, I had a folder ready, evidence, receipts, truth. And one last find from Gwen, a charge for a Paris trip, dated a year before Chloe, billed to an account in my name. He'd been planning his escape longer than I'd imagined. He thought he'd outsmarted me. But he'd underestimated the quiet ones, the ones who see what others miss. I wasn't supposed to be home. I'd canceled a meeting with the property manager, a hunch clawing at my ribs, urging me to turn the car around. The key turned softly, the house too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Then I heard it, upstairs, in my bedroom. I climbed the stairs, heart steady, footsteps deliberate. Bradley was in the closet, stuffing cufflinks and watches into a bag, his cologne thick, mixed with something floral, artificial. Chloe Martin lounged on my bed, the quilt Mom made for our 10th anniversary bunched under her heels. Glossy hair, fake tan, she scrolled her phone, legs crossed like she owned the place. "You must be Margot," she said, not looking up, her voice rehearsed. "Bradley's told me so much." My hands itched, but I smiled, cool and sharp. "Has he?" I wanted to say, "And you're the mistake he'll regret," but I held back, letting the moment simmer. Bradley emerged, freezing mid-step. "Margot, you weren't." "I live here." I cut in, voice ablaid.
"Still."
"For now." Chloe glanced up, unease flickering. She adjusted her blouse, as if manners could salvage the scene. "He said you were handling things." "Oh, I am." I set a folder on the dresser with deliberate care. "Some documents. For your plans." Curiosity overpowered her arrogance. She flipped through, her expression shifting. Confusion, alarm, betrayal. "What is this?" she asked, voice rising. "Choices," I said, calm as a winter morning. "His choices, forged signatures, alone risking my home, dead in my name. And your Paris trip? Paid with an account he opened with my identity." She turned on Bradley, folder trembling. "You said you were secure. You said she was the problem." "Chloe, I can explain." "No." She pushed the folder into his chest, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. Halfway there, she paused, looking back at me, not him. "I misjudged you," she said quietly, then left, her heels echoing until the front door closed softly. Silence settled, heavy and charged. Bradley rounded on me, face twisted. "You planned this?" "No," I said, meeting his glare, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "You underestimated the quiet ones." He snatched the folder and left, tire screeching. I stood in my bedroom, the air no longer thick with betrayal. I smoothed the quilt, fingers lingering on Mom's seams, and felt something shift. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Rachel Lynn's office gleamed with glass and quiet power, overlooking the Grand River like a throne room for silent victories. I arrived early, in a tailored navy dress, and the sensible heels Bradley called too serious. Today, they grounded me, each step a reminder of the mortgage I'd signed, the life I'd built, the woman I still was. The curtains swayed softly in the breeze from an open window, carrying the faint scent of the river, a moment of calm before the storm. Bradley arrived late, alone, his crisp facade wilted. No Rolex, pawned, maybe. His collar was uneven, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He looked smaller, not the man who'd toasted his new beginning, but a stranger unraveling under his choices. His attorney, a pale man with twitchy hands, mumbled about moving forward and rebuilding peacefully. Rachel didn't blink. She slid a folder across the table, voice crisp as winter air. "Let's begin with clarity.
Fraud.
Identity theft. Forged documents. Unauthorized loans. Falsified records. Shall I continue?" The attorney paled, stammering about avoiding adversarial measures. "My client offers generosity if we can skip criminal proceedings." Rachel leaned back. "Define generosity." Bradley's eyes met mine, no arrogance, just resignation, and a flicker of fear that sent a quiet thrill through me. "What do you want, Margot?" he asked, voice hoarse, like he knew the answer would cost everything. I opened my own folder, not papers but photographs. Our wedding, leaves swirling. Ethan's first steps in the living room Bradley mortgaged. Hannah's 10th birthday, balloons in the garden we'd planted. The house, freshly painted after my first promotion, sunlight catching the porch swing. "This," I said softly, voice catching on grief and resolve, "is what you chose to leave." He blinked fast, swallowing hard, and for a moment, I saw the man I'd loved, the one who'd danced with me to Stevie Nicks, who'd promised forever. But that man was gone, traded for a fantasy. My throat tightened, but I didn't look away. Rachel pressed on. "Margot retains the house, her inheritance, all business interests. Bradley repays the fraudulent loan. No spousal support. No shared assets. He flinched. That's everything. Not quite. I pulled out a deed, hands steady despite the weight of the moment. The building your agency leases. I own it now. The lease is paid for 5 years. You'll have a desk, a roof. A chance you didn't earn. His jaw dropped, disbelief etching his face. You own my building? Signed last week, I said. Uncle Charles's first property. He stared at the deed, then at me, searching for the woman he thought he'd broken. He wouldn't find her. He signed the papers, hands trembling, each stroke a surrender. 25 years, reduced to signatures and silence. He left first, shoulders slumped, folder clutched like a useless shield. I stayed, watching the river glitter through the window, its slow current a mirror to the calm settling in my chest. That evening, I planted a maple sapling in the backyard, Hannah's idea, its roots reaching into soil we'd reclaimed. The wind rustled the leaves, a whisper of new beginnings, and I stood there, breathing, feeling the weight of Mom's words. Your strength is in the quiet. 2 Thanksgivings later, my dining room glowed under new lights. I'd hung myself, their soft hum blending with laughter. Ethan carved the turkey, joking about his surgical precision, his engineering degree paying off in the kitchen. Hannah brought her girlfriend, Lena, who raved over Mom's pecan pie recipe, scribbling it down like a treasure map. Diana passed the Verners, her eyes bright with pride. Gwen stopped by with local cider, teasing me about my corner office. No toasts were needed. The clink of forks, the stories weaving through the air, were enough. Above my office lobby, a sign gleamed, Sinclair Properties. Bold mine. The name felt strange at first, like slipping into a coat I'd never dared wear. But it fit, not because I'd become someone new, but because I'd stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. Uncle Charles's gift wasn't a life raft, it was a launch pad, a chance to build a legacy. I'd thrown myself into real estate, walking every unit, memorizing leases, studying tax codes until my eyes burned. At night, I'd sit at my table, sipping chamomile, its steam curling like a quiet promise, the dining room lamp casting shadows on tenant files. In 2 years, I'd acquired 4 buildings, restructured assets, and quadrupled the profitability of our smallest complex. No spotlight, just conviction and a calculator that never lied. Bradley's agency limped along in my building, our only contact a monthly rent transfer. Rumors swirled. Chloe left him days after our showdown, his finances too shaky for her dreams. He tried dating apps, networking, pitched a memoir about reinvention. Nothing stuck. People don't follow those who overlook the quiet strength of women like me, women who rise with ledgers and resolve. My community became my foundation. After the divorce, my neighbor Clara, a widow who'd brought me lasagna when I couldn't cook, shared stories of her own rebuilding. Last month, I hired her daughter, a single mom, as my office manager, her gratitude a mirror to my own. I sought out others, divorced women, mothers starting over, offering them roles at Sinclair Properties, their resilience fueling our growth. At a community potluck, I served Mom's meatloaf, neighbors asking for seconds. One Mrs. Larson approached me, her face sheepish. I doubted you'd bounce back, Margot, she said, voice low. I was wrong. My granddaughter's struggling. Could you talk to her? I nodded, promising to meet her, feeling the weight of trust earned, a circle of respect Mom would have smiled at. Hannah visited often, sketching in her old room. One night, over takeout, she squeezed my hand. You didn't just survive, Mom. You showed us how to thrive. Ethan, quieter, came by one evening, his tools spread across the porch as he fixed a loose railing. We sat afterward, chamomile tea cooling between us, the night air soft with spring's promise. I used to think you stayed because you were weak, he said, voice tight, eyes on the maple sapling, now taller than the porch railing, its leaves catching the moonlight like stained glass. But now I know you stayed because you were holding everything together. I see it now, Mom. I see you. His words cracked something open in me, not pain, but pride, a bridge between us stronger than Bradley's betrayal. I touched his shoulder, my throat too full to speak, and we sat in silence, the sapling a reminder that even from scorched ground, something lasting could bloom. Tonight, I'd meet Daniel Forsyth to celebrate the Sinclair Foundation scholarships, 20 women studying finance, real estate, business, their dreams funded by Charles's legacy and my determination. I'd quadrupled the awards, each one honoring Mom's quiet strength, Charles's belief in me, the women who'd raised me to stand tall. At last month's ceremony, a recipient, a single mom with eyes like mine at 30, slipped me a note. "You showed me what's possible." I kept it beside Charles's letter, 2 anchors in a world I'd reclaimed. Spring painted Grand Rapids with tulips blooming along the river, the city shaking off winter like I had. At 52, I stood by the sapling, its branches swaying in the evening breeze, and thought of a girl I'd never meet, Ethan's daughter, perhaps, or Hannah's, running through this yard someday. If I could write to her, I'd say, "Grow tall, little one. Your strength is in the quiet, like your great-grandmother's, like mine. Never let anyone turn your silence into erasure." The words felt like a promise, a legacy woven through generations, rooted in this ground I'd reclaimed. The dining room lamp glowed late into the night, its light pooling on my table, a quiet vow that this life, this legacy, was mine to shape for my children, my community, the generations to come. Life doesn't end when trust shatters. It begins when you choose yourself, building not just for you, but for those you love, for the community that holds you, for the legacy that carries your name forward. Every quiet fight, every choice to rise, is a root in ground you reclaim. If Margot's story stirred something in you, if you've ever rebuilt from betrayal, for yourself or those you love, I'd love for you to join me. Subscribe to my channel for more tales of resilience and legacy, told with Midwest heart over coffee and truth. Let's keep shaping futures together.